For 50 years, Hollywood tried to hide a fact that Carlos Santana just brought to light. It's not about the drugs or the affairs that everyone knows about. When he was a child in Tijuana, something much worse happened about him. He has kept this a secret all the way through Woodstock, his spiritual awakening, and his return. He's finally talking now that he's getting close to the end of his life. What he just confirmed explains his pain for all these years, his suicide attempts, and his frantic search for forgiveness. This new information will change the way you look at his whole career. He was born on July 20, 1947, in the dirty town of Outland de Navarro in the state of Jalisco in Mexico. His dad, Jose, played the violin in mariachi bands and led symphony groups. Later, he played with his band, Los Cardenales, in Tijuana and Southern California. His mother, Josefina, kept the family together even though they were poor most of the time. At least 6 brothers lived in the house, and it was hard to keep food on the table. Jose kept playing after they moved to Tijuana, but money was still tight. That much stress quickly built up on Carlos' shoulders. He was given a fiddle when he was 5 years old and told to play like his dad. Jose thought that music wasn't just art, it was a way to stay alive. It was hard for Carlos to make the violin sound like his voice. It sounded like a dream of someone else. Carlos was quietly listening to radio stations from across the border while his father taught him exact mariachi songs. It was different what he heard there. Artists like B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, and Little Richard made music that had fire and soul. When he was 8, he picked up a guitar, and something changed inside him. It wasn't just the notes, it was also the freedom. Still, he played both styles for a while, learning from his father's practices while also following his blues dreams. Dreams didn't keep him safe from everything, though. He was abused by a guy from across the border when he was 10 to 12 years old. The man came with gifts, smiles, and toys. He also made people quiet and ashamed. Carlos said he felt bad about what happened and that it was his fault. His parents tried to play it down when they found out. They had no idea how to fix the harm. Carl hid it deep, like a child does when they don't know where else to put the truth. He finally came out of that darkness after years of not being able to forgive. In his words, it was freeing. But it took many years. The family went to Tijuana for good in 1955, when Carlos was 8 years old. It was loud, rough, full of people, and dangerous. Jose played music at fiestas while Carlos played the violin next to him. But the same fight kept happening. While his father held on tight to custom, Carlos was drawn to the electric sounds coming in from the U.S. The pressure built up until it burst when he was in his teens. He worked on the road for Javier Batiz when he was 12 years old and soon joined his band, the TJs. Batiz already played lead, so he moved to bass. It wasn't long before Carlos got lost in the beat of James Brown, Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, and Huey Lewis. He was taking it all in. It was hard to live at home. In 1961, when Carlos was 14, his father went to San Francisco to look for work in a factory. Carlos had to help earn money for the family. He was hurt. He played music on street corners and stole car parts to sell for cash. Eventually, he was caught stealing small items. He was a kid. Stealing to give his brothers food. He saved $300 by doing dishes that year to buy a guitar. When he got home, his mother had used the money for his sister's dental work and past due rent. He got $20 back from her. He took it and left. He went back to Tijuana, worked in strip clubs, lived off tips, and was able to make it on his own. After a year, his family came to get him. He said they took him hostage, threw him in a car, and drove him north. He quit school when he was 15 and went back to the strip clubs on his own time. He played the guitar every night for only $2 or $3 a set. People in the crowds were loud, drunk, and sometimes aggressive. He once played while things were going off. These spots were not safe. There was prostitution and gang activity going on behind every red curtain. The music got stronger. It turned into a tool, a voice, and a prayer for him. That's where he learned to show his pain without being heard. Even though his dad felt bad about it at first, he finally realized that Carlos could only make enough money to help out. Carlos tried pot for the first time in a back alley after a long night at the club. He was 16 years old, hungry, tired, and trying to get through it all. The drug gave him a way to escape, and it quickly became a part of the underground society he was living in. After a while, the people who managed his band would leave a big joint on the table at lunchtime just to see what he'd do. He smoked it and said it felt like going into a kaleidoscope. His friends would forget songs during practice, so he once told them they couldn't be high during practice. But something about that moment let a door open. He began to see music as more than just sound. It became color, energy, and spirit to him. He did not want to live in the U.S. When he got to San Francisco for the first time in 1963 to see his family again, he hated it. It was cold and strange. He missed how crazy Tijuana was. He went back. But something bigger pulled him back and forth between the two towns. He moved to San Francisco for good at last. Around 1965. He was 18 years old. The TikTok drive-in paid him $25 an hour to wash dishes. He sometimes slept there, sometimes slept on the street, and sometimes played anywhere they would let him. He said San Francisco had a lot of different kinds of music. Blues, jazz, folk, and Latin music all came together there. He became a citizen of the United States that same year. He played for change on corners and sneaked back to Tijuana to see American bands play. Each trip was good for his soul. He was taking in two worlds at once, the rough side of Tijuana and the acid-fueled exploration of the Bay Area. In 1966, he got together with David Brown and Greg Rowley to start the Santana Blues Band. Sometimes they only played for food and tips at small places like El Convoy. They fought all the time. Some people quit. Even though people came back, something kept changing. People began to like Santana's mix of Latin rhythms and blues guitar. Everything changed in 1967. When he first took LSD, he felt like his guitar was talking to him. It was what he called a spiritual awakening. He mixed rock, blues, jazz, and salsa in a way that no one else was doing. In the same year, promoter Bill Graham saw them play. They were going to play at Fillmore West. Then he changed their name to just Santana. But Carlos was still scared of large groups of people. Scars from his childhood stuck with him. He was forced to keep going by Graham. Carlos was told to believe in the sound instead of the fear. It worked. Their sound changed and grew during their stay at Fillmore. They were signed to Columbia Records in 1969, but Carlos was trying heroin. He wasn't at sessions. The record company almost dropped them. He put together some shows that didn't have him there, but they still went off. Their first record came out in August 1969, not long after Woodstock. 4 million copies were sold. Evil Ways became a big hit. Carlos was on so much acid at Woodstock that he thought his guitar turned into a snake. He kept playing, though. He became a celebrity after that wild and honest show. Carlos Santana stood in the mud at Woodstock without shoes on August 16, 1969. His band wasn't well known yet. Their first record wasn't even out yet. Even so, Santana was able to get a spot because Bill Graham pulled some strings. They didn't think things would go so quickly. Carlos had just taken some mescaline and thought he had a few hours to calm down before the game. After that, the plans changed quickly, and they were told to be on stage by 2 p.m. The drugs really worked. He was shaking, his eyes were wide, and the neck of the guitar was twisting in his hands like a real snake. But they couldn't back out. A crowd of 400,000 people waited for him. He shut his eyes and let his fingers move on their own. The band played a 45-minute set that was wild and raw and got closer and closer to Soul Sacrifice. Everything changed because of that one song. Michael Shreve, who was only 20, played a 7-minute drum solo that put everyone in a dream. Santana's face was twisted, showing that he was both happy and scared. As the sound of his guitar screamed through the mud. It worked in some way. The crowd exploded. Not a single person there knew who Santana was. They wouldn't forget the name, though, after that show. People would watch the video over and over for decades, and in less than an hour, a career was made. The high didn't last long, though. Santana passed out backstage. He threw up and his heart was racing. The trip is getting dark now. Back then, he promised himself that he would never do drugs again. It was too much. The fall, the confusion, and the scary loss of control. That promise didn't hold true, though. After that, the drugs slowly came back over the next few years. And he did it more than once. Even so, the Woodstock moment spread like flames. The first record from Columbia Records came out 2 weeks later, on August 30, 1969. It went straight to number 4 on the Billboard 200. Evil Ways moved up 9 spots on the Hot 100. It's crazy how fast over 1 million records sold out. Santana was famous. Then there was Abraxas, which came out on September 23, 1970. It wasn't just a record. It was an event. It was on the Billboard 200 for 88 weeks, and it was number 1 6 times. In the US alone, more than 5 million copies have been sold. All over the world, songs like Black Magic Woman, Char Gypsy Queen, and Oi Como Va became hits. When Latin rhythm, African drums, jazz organ, and rock guitar were mixed together, they made something new and electric. Together, Santana's leads and the soul of Gabor Szabo and Tito Puente made a beautiful sound. The name of the record came from a mysterious word in Danian by Hermann Hesse. A band called Abraxas was added to the National Recording Registry in 2015. Santana wasn't just doing well now. He was important. But the cracks got bigger behind the shine. As Santana 3 was being recorded from February to June 1971, cocaine started to show up everywhere. The rehearsals got out of hand. People arrived later. Energy went down. Michael Shrieve said it stopped people from being creative. Santana tried to take over by telling them to block the most heavy users. He said he wouldn't go on tour if things didn't go as planned, but things were already falling apart. Charles lost it on stage in Japan. During the show, he saw demons in his head. He beat up his guitar. It wasn't just a bad night. It was an accident. Many years later, in private talks, he said that moment was the start of a deep internal reckoning. In the same year, Neil Schon, who was 16 years old, joined the band. A real gem. A thing that starts fires. He played duets with Carlos when he had no one to rely on. Things got tense very quickly, though. Schon wanted to do well. He fought, pushed back, and asked questions. Things got heated at rehearsals. He got hit by Carlos one day. Schon walked out in a rage. Even though the music was still magical, the relationship was changing quickly. Their competition was etched into the records and stages they shared, giving inspiration to future musicians, but it came at the cost of peace. Then came the tour of Japan in 1972. Fields with as many as 50,000 people inside. They flew on a special Lockheed Electra that they called the Flying Turtle because it could carry 12 tons of gear. Behind the scenes, though, Carlos's life was falling apart. It was said in US tabloids that he was having affairs with Japanese groupies. Judy, his wife, read it all. They went to therapy. Even after the shows were over, the talk followed them home. People all over the world knew Santana, but the tabloids wanted to make fun of him. He was trying to keep his marriage and his soul. The record Caravansary, which came out in October 1972, was a big change. The party spirit was gone. Now it was spiritual, introspective, and jazz-influenced. Only 3 of the songs had singing. The rest seemed to be meditations. It got to number 8 on the Billboard 200, but fans didn't understand it. A lot of people turned away. After the lessons were over, Greg Rowley and Neil Schon left. They didn't understand Santana's new ideas. Something deeper was coming to the surface behind all of this. Santana went to therapy. For the first time, he talked about being mistreated in Tijuana as a child. Things he had forgotten for a long time. He had never named the pain. Carlos Santana met John McLaughlin in 1972. It was through McLaughlin that Santana met Sri Chinmoy, an Indian spiritual guide. By March 1973, he wasn't just following the teacher, he had changed who he was. He changed his name to Devadip, which in Sanskrit means the lamp, light, and eye of God. It wasn't a whim or an attempt to get attention. Santana gave up drinking, drugs, and many of the perks that came with being a rock star. Meditation took the place of indulgence with Chinmoya's help, and poems and music turned into ways of praying. Everything about his sound changed when he shifted. Albums like Caravanserai and Illuminate were influenced by jazz and classical music, and they were more about peace and spirituality than about beat and defiance. It was a discipline, but it had boundaries. According to Chinmoy, rock music was too loud and sexual. Over time, the tension between Santana's desire to be artistic and his guru's rules began to show. His religion quickly changed into something worse and more powerful. People who thought they knew him were shocked when he gave $150,000 to Chinmoya's ashram in 1973, which is more than $1 million today. He told his band to stay single and wasn't allowed to show love in public, but he broke those rules himself in private. In the end, the inconsistencies caught up with him. In 1982, Chinmoy sent him a mean letter in which he called him an ignorant sea drover and kicked him out of the society. The guru told his following to stop talking to him. After that, there was a terrible quiet. Later, Santana said that leaving the group was like leaving a family, but it also made him find his own voice again. David King, his wife, is the daughter of blues singer Saunders King. They got married in 1974 and had their first child, Salvador, the next year. While he was married, things seemed to be more stable, but fame never stopped trying him. She found a stack of love letters he had written to other women in a hotel 2 years later. They were long, personal, and embarrassing to read. Years later, in her autobiography Space Between the Stars, she wrote about how painful it was to love a man who was always somewhere else, like on tour, in his own thoughts, or feeling guilty. Santana admitted everything and said he wasn't thinking straight. He said the spiritual pressure and constant travel had made him lose touch with reality. Even though they made up, the damage to their relationship remained like an unseen crack that would never fully close. It was around this time that Santana and McLaughlin released Love, Devotion, Surrender in 1973. It was a very sacred album. It got to number 12 on the charts, but some people didn't get it. In between songs, he started reading poetry and leading meditations at his shows. What used to feel exciting now feels far away. Bill Graham, Santana's manager since the Fillmore days, saw that the crowds were getting smaller. Fans left in droves, confused by the preaching and looking for the fire that had once driven the band. Attendance dropped by almost 30%. The musicians in the group got antsy because the forced faith seemed to take away from their enjoyment of playing. On his next records, Santana played more jazz and soul, but he didn't have the same spark as in the beginning. By 1978, all of it was almost too much for him to handle. His faith was gone, his marriage was barely holding on, and he didn't know what to do with his job. It got bad for him, and one night he tried to kill himself with pills. She found him in time and saved his life. But even deeper than his sadness was something he had kept hidden since he was a kid. He was 10 years old when a man who had said he would help Carlos's family sneak him across the border into the U.S. from Tijuana started to hurt him. The abuse went on for 2 years and left him with scars that he kept to himself for decades. He lost his sense of self-worth, his view of love, and his trust in other people. It wasn't until much later that he talked about it. He said that forgiving her was the only way to get over the shame. His will to stay alive made him think that it was its own kind of prayer. Carlos Santana's life began to change in 1981. His album ZBOP came out in April of that year on Columbia Records, and the song Winning was from it. The win didn't last, though. The record only got to number 25 on the Billboard 200, which is a long way below what his name used to get. By the end of that year, Columbia had dropped him. The end of a relationship that seemed permanent at first. He turned to the blues to get back on his feet and recorded Shango in 1982. It was the stress, the sadness, and the quiet of the stage that made him turn back to cocaine. The relapse hurt his vocal cords so badly that he had to stop tours. It took him months to get his voice and confidence back. When the sound that made him famous stopped working all of a sudden in the early 1980s, it was the worst time of his life. Something much bigger was going on behind that fall. In therapy, Carlos finally told the truth about something he had kept hidden since he was a child. An American man had raped and sexually abused him in Tijuana from the ages of 10 to 12. Kindness was used as a tool by the man who said he would help the family cross the border. Carlos had to carry the shame by himself for many years. There was quiet until 1982 and 1983, and then there was anger. He tried to kill himself 7 times, even jumping off a bridge one time and making it through. Afterward, he said those years were like being locked in a room with no way out. When he finally spoke out about it, other people were brave enough to share their own stories. He was trying to start a family while everything was going on. Even though his daughter Stella was born in 1979, the cracks in the family were still there. Newspapers began to run stories about his relationship with a backup singer named Becky Johnson in 1984. His wife, Deborah Santana, stayed with him for years, but the damage was still there. Afterward, she wrote about how she felt invisible while keeping everything together. Something seemed to be wrong with the music, the marriage, and the man at that time. Between Appearances came out in 1985. It was supposed to be a return, but it turned into another fight. Ron Frangipane, the producer, wanted the song to sound like a hip-hop song. Carlos wished for fire. It only got to number 67 on the charts. And things got really tense in the room. He threw things and stormed off because he thought the music had lost its soul. Some people there said it looked like he was trying to break down the walls that were surrounding him. Carlos went through a different kind of sadness after leaving the guru Sri Chinmoy. In 1987, he turned to Kabbalah, a branch of Jewish philosophy, to find light. In order to record freedom, he lit candles, did routines, and meditated through long nights. In the end, he said that those meetings finally helped him face his pain instead of running away from it. For the first time, he felt like someone was trying to forgive him. The world wasn't ready for him to come back yet, though. Milagro, his record from 1992, barely made it to number 102 on the Billboard 200 and sold less than 50,000 copies around the world. His song with Vernon Reid, Bella, was lost in the early 1990s grunge wave and never made it to the radio. In 1994, while on tour in Europe, he had a small heart attack. Dr. S said that his heart was scarred from years of abusing drugs and booze. He said it felt like a giant was sitting on my chest. Everything stopped for 6 months after the attack, and he went to rehab. In the end, he said that his wife Cindy dragged him to the hospital and most likely saved his life. He gave it another shot in 1995 with Dance of the Rainbow Serpent, a 3-CD set full of rare tracks and unfinished songs from Woodstock. Even though critics liked it, MTV wouldn't show his videos because they thought he looked too foreign. The set, which came out on August 7, 1995, had 35 songs and a lot of photos, but it didn't do well in the charts. The world had turned its back on him, but he had the experience. He was even having trouble with his wife by 1996. When Deborah asked for a divorce, she said that the years of cheating, which included an affair with a European promoter in 1993, had broken her soul. In the liner notes of his 1998 record Brothers, Santana said he was sorry. "I'm truly sorry that I let down Deborah and our family. They made up in the end, but the wound stayed." He started making a new song with producer Matt Serletic in 1998. They were trying to make something different. Lauryn Hill was meant to come to the sessions, but she never did. She was all the rage after her Miseducation video. The prices of studio time and crew went over $500,000. It almost put him out of business. On the other hand, magical things came out of that chaos. 14 artists worked together on the record, which changed everything. Smooth with Rob Thomas topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 12 weeks in a row, and Supernatural sold more than 30 million copies around the world, including 11.8 million in the US alone. After 28 years, it was his biggest win since his last number one. There were bumps in the road to success. He got into a fight with Eric Clapton over the solo credits for The Calling, and Lauryn Hill sued him over uncredited singing on to Zion and settled for $5 million in 2001. That didn't stop the wave, though. After getting 9 awards in one night, Santana tied Michael Jackson's record set in 1984. This happened on February 23, 2000. He spoke softly but strongly in front of 1 billion people as he paid tribute to people who had been abused. That same year, Maria Maria went viral and sold 1.3 million CDs in the US. It stayed at number 1 for 10 weeks. The song became an anthem because it mixed Latin rock and hip-hop, but the entry to ACP didn't like the gang scenes in the video, and there were rumors that the words were written by someone else. DJ Khaled copied it for Wild Thoughts many years later, showing that it still has a lot of fans. By 2002, he had scored another hit with Shaman. Michelle Branch's song The Game of Love went to number 5 and won a Grammy. But success brought new stress. He fired Chester Thompson, the band's longtime drummer, during the 2003 tour, saying he didn't have enough energy. Fans saw it as yet another sign that your fame had turned on you. In 2007, he got a divorce from Deborah. In 2010, he married drummer Cindy Blackman again. Because they were connected, they made Corazon in 2014, which went straight to number 2 on the Latin albums chart. They did fight on stage, though. In Chicago in 2012, Carlos got up in the middle of a song and left. For him, love, music, and pride were always linked. In July 2022, when he was 75 years old, he passed out on stage in Las Vegas from being too hot and not drinking enough water. 10 shows had to be canceled. Afterward, he said it felt like his spirit was gone. After that, there was therapy, rest, and a lot of deep thought. After that, he broke a finger in early 2025, which pushed back his stay. And passed out again in April while soundchecking in San Antonio. He had COVID-19, so friends were afraid the worst would happen. He said that he was spiritually at a crossroads at age 78 but wasn't ready to give up. In the same year, a case revealed another dark side. He said that Christian Garvin, who used to be his manager, stole more than $1.6 million from him from 2008 to 2013. There were 58 counts of crime and a $260,000 bail in the case. The money was tied to the income from the tour and spiritual gifts that were meant to help others. Santana said the man's betrayal hurt like a knife in the back because he trusted him so much. It taught me again how fame can bring out both loyalty and dishonesty. His life has always gone back and forth between pain and salvation, from the bridge he walked across in 1983 to the stage he fell off of in 2022. Every controversy, fall, and broken chord has led to something bigger. The man who thought he had lost his voice found it again in the sound of forgiveness coming from the guitar that had saved his life before.